Welcome to another Auto Ricambi video, and today we will be replacing a brake booster on this Fiat Spider 2000. This is a fuel injected model. This is the new brake booster, and down there is the one that's in the car, and we'll be removing it and replacing it. First, I will move the reservoir and the master cylinder out of the way. So I will use a syringe to get the fluid out of the reservoir and then unbolt it, and then we'll unbolt the master cylinder from the booster, also remove the booster hose. So I'm going to use a syringe to suck the fluid out. So when we remove it and it's floppy, the fluid doesn't leak all over. Now that the fluid is out, we are going to remove the reservoir. Actually, let's remove the throttle cable first, it's in the way. There. Now let's get the master cylinder loose. It's just 13mm with a long extension. And now let's get the booster hose. And another way, maybe I don't have to loosen this because this valve usually would pop out of the booster. Let's see if that might be an easier way. There we go. That's a one-way valve, but the new booster has one, so we'll have to take it out of this hose. But for right now, let's remove this. And I pulled the master cylinder away from the booster, and these steel lines flex quite a bit. Hopefully there will be enough flex there where we can get the master cylinder out of the way enough to get the booster out. Next, we have to disconnect the brake pedal from the booster and also unbolt the booster from the firewall. So we will have to undo this clip right there, and that's how we disconnect the booster from the brake pedal. And then there is 4 bolts. I mean, actually it's nuts, not bolts. It's 1, 2, and then on the other side of the steering shaft there is one that's the same height as this, and one at the same height as that. Not sure if I can't really see it. I think one is right there, if I can see it right, and then one above. But let's go and remove these. This is a spring clip. It has to be, the top part here has to be pried toward the left to disengage it from the shaft, and then it can be moved down. But be careful when prying it to the left not to pry too much and bend it, because then when we put it back it won't clip correctly. So we'll see. I think I'm going to put this in to try and pull it down, so I can pull on it while I'm bending the top part to disengage it. There we go. Now this pin can be moved out, but it's spring loaded. There's a lever there and a spring, and we might be able to pry it out a bit. There we go. And now the pedal is all floppy. We can start undoing the 4 nuts that hold the booster. I'm just gonna use a regular extension and a U-joint with a 13 at the end. And there is 2 more. If we just follow this over to the passenger side, it will be easy to find, even though it's difficult to record on a camera. But one is the same height as this lower one, and the other one same height as this upper one, just on the other side of the steering column and the pedal assembly. So I found an angle where we can see the right side nut to be removed. I already removed one from the stud right there, and the other one is that one up there. I bent up the master cylinder, pulled it up so it's out of the way, and I used a pry bar to pry the booster away from the firewall, and it's away, loose. And now the question is, can I get it out? A lot of hoses and cables on the way. The clutch cable is a little bit in the way. The fuel line is also in the way. This is the pressure line that pressurizes the fuel rail. I removed the fuel hose from the fuel rail that you can just barely see the barb over there, and then I removed the fuel return hose from the fuel pressure regulator. Hopefully that will give me enough space to get the booster out. I really don't want to have to remove the entire intake manifold. That would be kind of a pain. I would have to open up the cooling system and all that. So let's see if this works. I was able to move the booster away from the firewall with a bit of wiggling and prying. That right there is the fork that engages the brake pedal, and hopefully I can get it out by the alternator. If not, I might have to remove the alternator, but I would rather remove the alternator than the intake manifold, because it's a lot less work. What I'm going to do now is, there is a plate that's bolted to the back of the booster, and I'm going to remove that so that it's a little bit skinnier. So let's get this plate out. There we go, and as one can see, it's not symmetrical. I put 2 little dots here, so I know that this is the top. I use a mechanical punch, and that way for sure I know that this is the top side when it goes back. Even with that plate removed, I don't see this booster coming out in this space between the alternator and the fuel rail. This might be easier on a carbureted car that has a smaller manifold, like the 1800, 1600 ones. But looks like I'm going to have to remove the alternator, disconnect all these wires, remove the upper bolt, remove the lower bolt, remove the bracket. This is a 95 amp alternator, so it takes a 13 millimeter for the upper bolt. If it was a stock one, it would be a 17. The inner nut for the alternator bracket is a 19, and we need a U-joint to get to it. Okay, so the alternator is out, so we should be able to remove the booster. Still tight. There we go. Something we need to do before we install the new booster, other than installing the plate in the back, is checking how far out this piston protrudes. The specification is about 1 millimeter past the surface of the booster, but just for kicks and grins I'll measure this one as well and compare, and then we'll see. This pulls right out, and there's just an anchor nut and a lock nut where one can adjust the length. If this is too long, then the brakes will be on a little bit even with the pedal not being pushed on, and that would, even if the car can roll, eventually in a few miles would heat up the brakes, and a lot of times the brakes just lock up. If it's too short, then there will be too much play in the pedal. We're going to measure how far it protrudes. Here's this ruler, and then I'm going to measure the top of this, and that's 22.3, and I measured the ruler as 25.7, so this protrudes over 3 millimeters. That's way too much. I'm holding the bottom with these small vice grips, and then I'll just turn the nut in. It's a 7 millimeter, and then the lock nut is an 8, but turn it in about a turn and a half, and let's see what it is now. That's 24.8, and this is 25.7, so it still needs to go down a little bit. 24.8, so that's very close, just 1.1 millimeter off, so that should be easy to adjust. Okay, we have the booster in the same position as it's in the car, and here's our bracket. I put 2 dimples there, so I know this way is up, so then it will have to go like this. Here we go, all 4 installed, and I'm going to put this seal back as well. Because I removed the alternator, I think it should be okay to put this back with the bracket on. Wish me luck! It's greasy. Maybe installing the bracket wasn't such a great idea. Let's see. Just barely went in there. just need to get it past all the cables, speedometer cable, clutch cable. There we go. As it came through, the fork didn't quite hit the pedal, so I'll have to pull it out a little and line it up so the fork is around the brake pedal. I played with it a bit from the engine compartment and was able to line it up, and now we need to put the nuts on the 4 studs. There's 1, 2 that was not poking through yet. You have to play with it, and then over there and up there, those look like they have come through all the way. Here's a little trick on how to get washers on those studs. Just get a long skinny screwdriver, put the 2 washers on, and then touch the end of the screwdriver to the stud and push the washers on. The booster is bolted on, and now we need to connect the pedal to the booster. I have taken this loose from the spring. Here's the spring. This is the spring that pulls back on the brake pedal. There we go. There, and now we need to put the special clip on. There, we can see that that's over the pin, so it can't come off. Now all we have to do is connect the spring. That's what it should look like. I had to use 2 hands to leverage it in. All I have to do is put the master cylinder back on. I'll connect the fuel lines that I disconnected, the vacuum line to the booster, the other vacuum line to the charcoal canister, and put the alternator back, and put the reservoir back, fill it with fluid, and we should be good to go, and didn't have to drain the cooling system or bleed the brakes.